On to talk a bit of the round ball game. Neil Sherwin's always fantastic with his time with us here at TAB Radio. Good afternoon, Neil. How do we find you this Monday afternoon?
Yeah, pretty good. Yourself?
Oh, doing well, mate. Doing well. Where do we start? A-League or English Premier? A-League can wait. Perth Glory were at their deplorable best again on the weekend, unfortunately. Let's go to the English Premier League. Can I ask you in one word, yes or no, is the Liverpool title race over?
Yes.
Wow.
Why not? Yeah, why not? Yeah,
Yeah, why not? I like that. I love that.
Yeah, why not? Let's say yes. That'll put cast amongst pigeons. No, it's still very early days, but any team that loses 4 games in a row at this stage, there's definitely question marks around them. They're not the first team to do it, but your expectations are really high after last year, and especially with the money that they spent in the off season. But it's not going well so far, and Arsenal are the team that are taking advantage of it. I will caveat the yes, but the fact that the reason I say so is because I think Arsenal are best positioned to take the title, but everybody else is a little bit budged. If you look at the table between Bournemouth in second and Crystal Palace, say, for example, in 10th, there's only 5 points between them, so it's still very early. But losing 4 games already out of 9 is alarm bells are definitely ringing.
Yeah, you're in a bit of trouble, Al, if you're losing to my boys, Manchester United, Liverpool. So
just ignore that text I just sent you, Neil, about Paul Harvey. That wasn't meant for you.
I'll put my feelers out.
Well, I'll tell you what, Neil, Bournemouth are doing some tremendous things early in this new season, and they continued their good form there yesterday.
Yeah, I think Bournemouth are a good news story. I think that they've been like that for a few years. A small club, relatively speaking, tiny stadium, limited budget compared to the teams around them, but they just find a way to win, and they've got good players. That you would expect them to be rated every year, right? That the guys put in a performance. Big clubs come along, take the best players. Semenyo being the one that people would expect to move on next. But I've got a really good coach in Iraola as well, and he's probably the one that they would like to keep hold of, given the momentum that he's had over the past few seasons. But yeah, it's difficult for teams like this because at this stage of the year, you probably are okay because other clubs have European commitments, for example, and we've seen that with Nottingham Forest struggling on 2 fronts, and that's whereas Bournemouth are just concentrating on the league for now. When those other teams either bomb out of Europe or aren't playing every week, you might find they catch up a bit because they've got bigger squads and probably better players and bigger budgets. But for Bournemouth to have played 9 and just lost 1, it's a very good start.
Yeah, had a fantastic start, and Nottingham Forest continue to struggle. Where are you seeing their future, Nottingham Forest? Do they improve under their new regime? Do you fancy, Neil, or are they destined for a relegation scrap? Of course, as we know, it's been well publicised, had a horrific 39-day reign. Did Adj Postecoglou there at Nottingham Forest, was moved on quickly. They won. I think was it via 2 penalties? I think it might have been via penalties. Was it? Yeah. 2 penalties against Porto during the week, and they've gone down against Bournemouth. What's their plight look like?
So I didn't actually mind this result because Morgan Gibbs-White irked me with his comments after the European win, where he talked about how breath of fresh air and the players had a new lease on life with Sean Dyche coming. He'd been there 3 days. It clearly pointed that the players were basically downing tools until Ange was gone, and now that Sean Dyche has come in, they were going to start playing football again, which is a terrible way and a really unprofessional way for any player to be. I know we have that bias towards Ange being from this part of the world, but you can't defend his record. It was terrible. But I think what we've seen now, given their loss to Bournemouth, is that it wasn't just Ange Postecoglou being the problem. It's Nottingham Forest culturally, possibly right up to the owner, but also the fact that they've got a lot of problems on the pitch as well. And Sean Dyche coming in and telling everybody that they're amazing and motivating them in the dressing room isn't going to fix all of their woes. And yeah, I think they'll be involved in a relegation battle. This should have been one of the probably 4 or 5 teams down towards the bottom end of the table for the duration.
So there you have it. They're in a bit of
Could
strife.
be in a bit of strife. What about your boys, Man City? They were, I guess, a little bit disappointing again, going down 1-0 to Aston Villa on the weekend. They've had a bit of a hot and cold start to the season, but saying that, they're within 2 games of Arsenal. How have you seen the start for Man City? 5 wins, 3 losses and a draw to date.
Yeah, the 2 losses came earlier on in the season. Then, against Villa, they weren't very good. I think Villa deserved it. They were quite overrun in midfield. They didn't have either Rodri or Nico Gonzalez from the start, and that made a massive difference to Villa being able to win the midfield battle. And they were good value for the lead. City created very little until the second half. Haaland had a great chance 1-on-1, but hit it straight at Emi Martinez. And they had Pau Torres cleared one off the line, and City huffed and puffed towards the end, but they haven't got much output. I think Haaland scored 12 goals, and the next highest score for City is own goal on 2. They're just not getting contributions from other players. I think Savinho and Oscar Bob were very, very poor. Lukaku was better when he came off the bench, but they're just not getting enough from those wide areas. You look back at previous City iterations of City teams where they had wide contributions from someone like Riyad Mahrez, for example, who'd chip in with 15 goals a season, and Leroy Sané when he was at City was another great, exciting winger to watch. So that they're really not getting those contributions, and a lot is being put on the shoulders of Haaland, and he's well able to take it. Don't get me wrong, but if he doesn't score, it's who's stepping up next. Even Tijani Reinders started the season quite well, but he was playing as a number 6, so he's not going to get you goals from that deep. So they do still have a few problems. I didn't think City would win the title, but I do expect them to comfortably finish in the top 4, and I haven't seen anything to suggest that that's going to change. I think they'll have slip-ups along the way, but ultimately they are too rich and too good and have too good a coach to not finish in the top 4. So they'll be fine, but I think, they're not going to win the league by any means this year.
Liverpool's plight this year sort of echoes what Man City sort of went through last year. They went into the season sort of full of hope and expected to win another title, and it seems like a bit of a similar story for Liverpool this year. What about Sunderland? They've surprised a fair few. They grabbed a last gasp winner against Chelsea on the weekend, and they actually sit up in 4th position. They are 5 points ahead of their rivals in the northeast there in Newcastle. How have you seen their season to date, and are they a squad that's capable of challenging for European football?
I would say no, because I think, and I don't mean this in a disparaging way towards Sunderland, but I think they're a team that needs to bank as many points as they possibly can early on in the season before they revert to type. I think this is they're performing way above expectations, and that's great for them. They've got a massive supporter base. Traditionally, even a Premier League club for years, all of that, but that doesn't count for anything when you just come up. Your first aim is survival. You do not be the yo-yo club that goes up and down, and we've seen that with Leeds, for example, quite a bit. They need to consolidate and stay in the league. Maybe they'll do Nottingham Forest and be up around the top 4 in the new year, but for now, it's really about getting as many points on the board and taking that pressure off you, because the expectation with the 3 that come up is that they'll be the same 3 that go back down. And that often plays out to be the case. You've had your few exceptions over the years, obviously Forest, as I said, being one of them. And if Sunderland can have something like that, then it's fantastic for them. But yeah, I think they got some experience in there. Grant Xhaka being the obvious one, somebody like that who's been around the block in the Premier League, and then obviously with Leverkusen in Germany as well. He's a great leader to have, and somebody that will be really crucial for them. But you look at these teams, and while they're having a great start, there may be 1 or 2 injuries away from reversing to type, as I mentioned. So not to wish doom on them or anything like that. It's a fine line when you're one of those promoted teams trying to find your feet. But yeah, you can't argue with the start of the year. They've had a really great opening, and that goal to beat Chelsea was fantastic counter-attacking football. So if you've got that in your locker against bigger teams where maybe you don't see much of the ball, or you're defending around your own box, if you can then hit them on the counter-attack and be clinical, you're definitely going to pick up some points along the way.
Yeah, and you speak of their run as well. They've had a pretty cushy run so far. The next 10 games, Man City twice. They've got Liverpool, Newcastle, Arsenal, Brighton as well. So it's a tough next little patch, but they've made a great start. Riley?
Hey, Neil, have you seen the start to the A-League season?
Oh, God. I have seen it. Yes. No, it's actually been good. There's been some cracking games. We've seen the Newcastle Jets and Central Coast Mariners game, for example, round one. Late drama in that one. There was a similar situation with Wellington yesterday, winning in the 97th minute. The Alex Badalado hat-trick for Newcastle on Friday night against Victory. Some great goals in there. So I just think it's been a pretty entertaining start to the season. It's been enjoyable, unless you're a Perth Glory fan.
My goodness.
Yeah, that's why I was kind of hesitant. You have to separate it into two categories: those who have enjoyed the league starting, and those that are Perth Glory tragics. So yeah, it's a bit of a Groundhog Day so far.
I think Perth Glory are just tragic.
The last three games, I mean, it was a while back, but 9-0. 2-2 and 4-0 if you include the AC Milan game. Hey, where do you go to from here? Melbourne City should be a decent side. They lost 4-0. They look pretty poor, to be honest. But we have been assured that they will be tighter and less leaky at the back in 25-26. They've got some winnable games coming up. Melbourne Victory at home will be tough, but then they've got Central Coast, Newcastle, Macarthur over their next three. Are they a chance to put a couple of wins together? Where do you honestly see the Perth Glory playing out? Have they got the squad to at least be competitive and potentially challenge for a top 6 spot this year?
The problem with Glory is that football's not played on paper. They have a good squad on paper, but they do not have all their best players on the pitch. Their best three midfield for me is Nicholas Pennington, Luke Amos and Tom Lawrence. And none of them played at the weekend. So if you can't get your three best midfield players on the pitch and fit and firing, well, what's the point? You know, they're not part of the equation. They've had some problems at the training ground. They've had to leave Mirrabooka and move out to the Sam Kerr Football Centre because they've been picking up too many injuries on the surface. So that's a great sign in the background. They've got 7 at least players out injured at the moment. So yeah, they had a squad of 32 or 33 players signed on, but if, you know, a good quarter of them are already injured 2 weeks into the year. You're down to your second or third choice in certain positions. You see what happens with the goalkeepers. You know, losing 2 goalkeepers in the space of a few days. Yes, it's a freak accident with a couple of them, but it just seems that it's always Glory that this stuff happens to. And I think, you know, that the squad, if it's stretched in the first few weeks, or you haven't got your best players in the park, you can't afford to wait until November, December before you find your feet in the league. You'll be too far behind. And I also think that David Zrilic simply needs to win some games because he's won 4 out of 28, I think it is so far. That's dreadful. And he's lucky because there's no relegation in the league and whatnot. But I think the giving it the big one at the start of the year and saying it's going to be different, and to your point about conceding less goals, well, they've conceded 6 in 2 games so far, and they look dreadful at the back. They look very soft. They brought in experienced players in Brian Calsack and Scott Wootton, but somehow they look even worse, giving up goals with cheap mistakes, looking slow and sluggish, and you know, not being able to see out games. 2-0 up at home to Wellington. I know you mentioned winnable games coming up, but Wellington at home in the first game of the season is one of the games you chalk down as winnable. They blew a 2-0 lead in that one and possibly could have lost it as well. So the signs are really bad, and it is very early, but how long do you let this go on before you get to the point where, hang on, the season could be a write-off, we really need to make a change. But then you go back into the cycle of hiring and firing, and we've been through that so many times before that people are just jaded. There's no reason and no incentive to go and watch Perth Glory at the moment, unfortunately. A game on a Friday night against Melbourne Victory should be blockbuster stuff. But it's a bit meh. People are just apathetic now. And I think the thing for me is, it's okay to have angry fans because at least people care. But once people start to have apathy, you've lost everything because they're neither invested or annoyed. They just don't care anymore. And it's very hard to get that back.
Yeah, and
that's really well said, I think.
Yeah, 100%. It's been such a long existence, and really since the NSL days, there's been absolutely no success. They had that one really good season under Popovich and that grand final where they lost to that Bessar Borussia BS penalty.
Yeah.
And apart from that, it's just been a very lean run for over 2 decades.
But as Neil said, it used to be like a Friday night game at home against Melbourne Victory. That used to be such a big event. Like, that would attract thousands of people to it each and every week, or an occasion like that too, or what was formerly 2 really big teams in the competition. And you'd be surprised if they fill 3/4 of the stadium at the moment.
Yeah, I agree. But fair to the Perth Glory fans, I think they had nearly 8,000 their last home game, which was against Wellington. It was season opener, okay, but given how poor they've been lately, that's not a bad turnout. Not a bad turnout comparing it to a few other clubs around the league. Can I just ask, you mentioned the training centre. So have they left Mirrabooka for good? Because there was over $1 million invested in that training centre, turf, facilities, fencing, whatnot. And, it was only a few weeks ago that was being sort of lauded as their new training facility and how much money and time has been spent on that. Have they left Mirrabooka for good? So that's all in their wake now, and they're now at Sam Kerr?
So, look, the ground at Mirrabooka is a Sunday League pitch. I've played games on that for years. We had to wait for Glory to finish training so we could take the goals a couple of months ago before our game started. It's basically a public park, so there's that side of it. The surface is too hard. Joel and Asmo had an Achilles injury at training last week, and that was the final straw. So they've still got their admin offices, and they've done it up there. And to your point, money's been spent on it. There's a big sign up there about Glory. Just talk about putting fencing up around the place, which the residents are objecting to. But at the moment, they've moved out to Sam Kerr for training because the surface either needs to be redone, or they've got to figure something out what to do with it, because it's only going to get harder as we get more into the summer, right? And it's warmer and more dried out. So they're looking for a solution to that. But at the moment, the media press conferences before games are now at Sam Kerr and not at Mirrabooka, which is the club's headquarters. So things have changed pretty quickly. And, I don't know what the solution is other than completely relaying the surface, but that's just going to cost more money. So who pays for that? It's not great that they finally found a base, albeit on a temporary basis, given they're leasing it from the city of Stirling for 5 initial years with the option for another 5. But to be out of there already within a few months from a football perspective is pretty bad.
Yeah, that's not good. Who do you play for? Who's your local side?
I just play amateur football for Kingsway, so just Sunday League for me.
Kingsway Olympic.
For any of the other stuff. Yeah.
There we go. Well, it's a good club to be a part of locally at the moment, doing great things. Perth Glory take on Melbourne Victory Friday night. Perth Glory $3.25, Melbourne Victory $1.95. Draw at $3.90. Any chance Perth get a result there, Neil? Or if you were betting from a neutral perspective, would you take the $1.95 about Melbourne? You know what?
There is a chance because Victory are terrible as well. it's too bad.
Should be a blockbuster.
Victory and all sorts of. Well, it feels like it's the battle to who picks up John Aloisi as their coach. Potentially, the two of them, maybe that's the prize for whoever wins on Friday. They get John Aloisi. But I think I'll go for a high scoring draw. I think maybe a 2-2 draw because both defences look suspect. And, Glory shipped 4 last week, Victory shipped 5. To be fair, they do both have some good attacking players. Dennis Shenroe for Victory has been brilliant in his first couple of games. You've obviously got Taggart for Glory. So, I think there'll be goals and a high score and draw, I'll say.
All right, that's the way we'll play it. There's a game at the moment. Macarthur lead Adelaide United 2-1, 75 gone there. Neil, always a pleasure having a chat, mate. Thanks so much for your time. Enjoy the rest of your week.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Awesome stuff. Neil Sherwin from Backpage Football.